we're going over the daf, or a little bit over the daf, from the beginning of Yud on the base, and we're going to be going the whole way till the middle of Yud Ches on the base. So we're already in the middle of the piece over here. So we had Daf Yud on the Aleph, a Braisa, where Reb Shimon was Doirish. And the pasuk which says, "Lo yisuf alech b'shracha ma'isa degan v'treish v'zrach v'chayis b'karka v'tzinach v'cholna z'recha shenidoim and v'isach v'trumis yotfa." So he says that ma'isa degan refers to ma'isa sheni. Obviously, b'chayis b'karka is b'chayis, as a thing. B'karka v'tzincha refers to katas v'asham, right? And the recha is the recha is Taido Shlamim, and the Dveisacha is Taida. Sorry, the Dveisacha is Taido Shlamim, and the recha is. Switches it around the order. The Rech is Oilam, yeah. So Bakitza, he learns that the different things of Sukkim are referring to all sorts of different things, right? You have Ma'is Sheni, B'chayres, Taidur Shlamim, Katas Va'asham, Oilam. So, and he learns one out of the other with the Kavachayma, that each one is learned from Kavachayma from the other, and therefore the Pasuk, Lo Yisuf Alechol, even though it's all talking about Chutz L'chayma, but it doesn't really apply to Chutz L'chayma. We can learn from it multiple other Isurim of by Bikurim, actually, Kara Aleim, by Taidur Shlamim, Fnei Zrika, the Chor for the Azar is not allowed to eat after Zrika, the Chatas V'asham is Chatas V'asham Chutz L'klayim, and Oila Bichlal even Teichel Klein, right? So that's how he's doirish the pasuk. So Daf Yud Zayin base we have Rabbi. Rabbi says Mishabech Reb Shimon and says that even though there's a pirka to all the Kavachaimas, nevertheless the Aldimik Reb Shimon Tailed. In other words, someone whose mother is having a baby that should be like Reb Shimon. He loy Seiled. Mishabech Reb Shimon. What's the pirkas? So what's the Perkas? The Perkas, the Gemara goes through and basically says like this: that the Gemara we made a Kavachayim from Bikurim to Ma'isa Sheni. That what? That in other words, made a Kavachayim from Ma'isa Sheni to Bikurim. What's the Chumra Bikurim over Ma'isa Sheni? The Chumra Bikurim Ma'isa Sheni is the Bikurim is also Lazar. So the Gemara says the Amos says a Chumra the other way around. Ma'isa also has a Chumra. Ma'isa is also La'oinen according to Shimon. Makkos according to Shimon, and you're telling me there's a chumra of Taidur Shlamim over Ma'isa, because the chumra of Taidur Shlamim over Ma'isa is that it's a regular carbon which needs mat and damim and imur and the gamis beach. Adra of Ma'isa is common because it's when it needs to be redeemed, that has to be redeemed with kesef tzur, which doesn't apply to other things which we redeem. Other things which we redeem, even when you do need to redeem them when they become pasul, don't need kesef tzur. It doesn't need a special type of coin. Anything is good, and that's the perka with regard to that kavachayim, and that which you. And he's telling me that there's a chumra b'chor over Taidur Shlamim because it's kaddish from the beginning, from Rechem, from when it's born. So Adra b'Taidur Shlamim machama because they need smicha, misachim, you pour wine when you and the tznucha of the chazan and the shaykh, and the chumra of katas and asham for over b'chor that is kachim. Adra b'chor is machama kedushasim Rechem. And he's going to tell me the oil is more common than chatas va'asham because it's totally burnt. Adra b'chatas and asham is more common because it's mechaper. Mashenkin oil isn't any specific avera. The kitza, so there's pirchas to all of them. So Taka, what's Taka Pshat? And Rabbi said the older imik Reb Shimon, the praise of Shimon. So he's Taka saying that you're right. Reb Shimon's kavachayim is all of kashas. But nevertheless, what Rabbi is saying is that Reb Shimon was smart, so to speak. Reb Shimon was the praise is in the fact that he knew how to be doirish the pasuk in such a way that he didn't start from the beginning of the pasuk in order. He didn't first start talking about bechor. If you would first start talking about bechor, then all you would have would be he would only have one din of bechor, not all the different dinim of bechor. He would only have the din of bechor lifnei zrika, but he wouldn't have the din of bechor la'achas zrika, and so on with so forth with all the other things. But he was smart, and he started off with the end of the pasuk to bikurim, and then established that bikurim is talking about shaloi karalim, and then he went to the next thing. Then he went to Toido Shlamim. So they didn't go in order, and that way he could get more and more chidush. So that's the shvach. Okay, so that's really explaining the Rava saying the Aldim Ekrib. Even though there's pirchas, the Kavachayim is all of kashas. Nevertheless, the praises that he knew to be derish the pasuk, not in order, so that he could get as many malchias and dinim as possible out of the pasuk. So now the Gemara asks the kasha that lechura, how can Reb Shimon learn all these different malchias from the pasuk through a Kavachayim, right? And then say there's one extra for something else when you can't learn a ein masirim min adin. You can't learn out lavim if the lavim are teaching me that if you're not allowed to do something, and if you do, you get malchus, which is called an azhara. The Torah is telling you don't do something. If you do, you get malchus. That you can't learn out of a kavachayim. And if that's the case, then the chura, all you have from the pasuk is one straight up pasuk which says you're not allowed to eat chutz l'chayma, and then there's malchus if you eat chutz l'chayma by all the different things. B'chayr is taida v'asham, taida b'chayr chatas asham oila. Where do we get all these extra dinim from? Where do we get these extra malchus? Ein masina min adin. Even according to man that says oinshim min adin is ein masina min adin. So Gemara Taka says that the surah ba'alma, that really, although Reb Shimon uses the lashon malchus, he doesn't mean that. Rather, what it means to say is the pasuk where he's telling me, in other words, two things. The pasuk is telling me lo yisuch alecha, which means to say you're not allowed to eat chutz l'chayim, and if you do, you get malchus. But besides that, as far as the Yisroel are concerned, you didn't need to tell me all of this because you could learn out of a kavachayim. So therefore, the pasuk also, this is the way Rashi learns, that not everybody learns this way. The pasuk is also telling me, besides the malchus of chutz l'chayim, also telling me extra yisurim which you can learn out of a kavachayim. And right, as he says in the Bryce. So when he says in the Bryce, ma bazel lamdeinu, etc., etc., it doesn't mean that there's a malchus. If means that there's an issa. The malchus you wouldn't be able to learn. The malchus is, you can only have malchus by chutz l'chayim, but there's yisurim. So then the Gemara asks, how can you say it's only an issa? Rabbi says clearly that right, and Amoira has to be more clear in his lashons, and he says that Zaru eats from the oil of Nezrika, it gets 5 malchus. Right, and the cheshbon is that he's a zar, meaning he's Yisroel who's eating kachim, which is not which even la'achazik is a problem, like we see in the braysa. He's eating from the oila, which no one's allowed to eat. Lifnei zrika meaning even if it was a regular carbon, you wouldn't be able to eat it. Even a kohen wouldn't be able to eat it before zrika. It's chutz l'chayim, but it's also chutz l'klein. So you have 5 different malchias, and he says lo yikachamish, and you're telling me that the balkarcha there's only one malchus. So what's pshat? So the Gemara answers Taka. Even in Rabbi, you have to say the Chamishi Yisurin Hava, and the Ritva explains that the reason why he says Malchus, he's just kind of paraphrasing, just repeating the language of Reb Shimon, who also says Malchus. Then the Gemara says that's very nice to say in Rabbi, but our Brayza says Elein Aloikin. Our Mishnah at the beginning of the parak says Elein Aloikin, and the following Mishnah says another example of Elein Aloikin is Oichel Bikurim Acheloi Karalem and Kachim Kachim plus the Klein. Both Bikurim Acheloi Karalem and Kachim Kachim plus the Klein were only learned by Reb Shimon in the Brayza as a result of a Kavachayim. Because we don't need the pasuk chutz l'chayim by bikurim, because it can be learned out of a kavachayim from Ma'aser Sheni. So the pasuk must be talking about bikurim achelei karalem and kachim chutz l'chayim. We also learned out of kavachayim, and only then did we get to the din that kachim chutz l'chayim is the pasuk telling me not to do is a malchus. So the Gemara. So how do at least these two you've got a problem with bikurim achelei karalem and kachim chutz l'chayim. So what the Gemara answers is, and according to Rashi, a little bit chasim in a sefer. The Gemara basically answers that bikurim actually koraleim we can learn out because kra yisero. There's a kra yisero meaning to say that Reb Shimon's talking about Yisroel, true, and Ba'amis, if there was only that one pasuk of Reb Shimon which he has the brayta, it would all be for chutz l'chayma. But Ba'amis has another pasuk. Earlier on it says that you're supposed to bring all your karbanos and things lifnei Hashem and lekachah to Yerushalayim to the Beis HaMikdash. And later the pasuk says lo yisuchal and repeats the whole list. Now, if it wanted to just say you're not allowed to eat a chutz l'chayim, it could have said lo yisuchal la'oichlam, and we would know it's going on what the pasuk says that you have to bring. Don't eat them outside of the chayma. The fact that it says again and it's mefaret each one means to tell you that there's an extra lav for all of them. What's pshat? There's an extra lav for all of them. Pshat is that bikur, the way Rashi explains, bikurim actually kara aleim not be a malchus, and for all the other things lifnei zrika. Lifnei zrika there would be the issue, in other words, for a kohen to eat before zrika. Taka, with regards to kachim chutz l'chayim, we haven't really answered, and Rashi explains that Taka is learned from Mabasa beside the treifa, which we'll soon see. So that's Taka pshat. Ultimately, at the end of this whole business, kachim chutz l'chayim has a malchus but not from this part, from Mabasa beside the treifa. Bikurim actually karalem is from the kra yisera, and all the other things in the pasuk, which there's no kriya by, right, besides for bikurim. So for that we'll learn that there's a malchus for lifnei zrika only. So there's only really 2 malchus shayach by the other karbanis, or even by bikurim. One is for chutz l'chayim, and then another one by bikurim actually karalem, and by all the other karbanis lifnei zrika. When again the kachim chutz l'chayim, it's a different pasuk of a basa b'sad trade. Okay, so then back down that on to what we learned today. We did a gufa. Gufa means that Rava said earlier that zar shacham eichel nezrika is a chamish. It says a lashon of loike chamish. Remember, what we mean to say there's 5 yisurim. For the Gemara, besides these 5 yisurim, there's another few psukim which should be shaykh to zar who's eichel nezrika. One is that the pasuk says zar eichel kikoydashem, which is the pasuk by the miluim, the kachim, which is by the miluim. It says zar eichel kikoydashem because it's kachim. So we learn from there it's because it's kachim. So it should apply to anyone who eats kachim. There should be an extra malchus. The Gemara says taka enochi nami. There's an extra malchus, but only in a situation where the lashon pasuk is va'achlu oisim ashakupa b'hem, and then the Kleinim should eat it because they have had the kapara, and the zar is not allowed to eat it. So we learn from there that only in a situation where the Kleinim can eat it, but oila, even the Klein doesn't eat it. So therefore, the pasuk zalirah doesn't apply to oila, and therefore Rava there's no sixth thing. Then the Gemara asks, what about basa b'sada teifel sechelu? From there we learn that anything which goes out of its rishos, out of its mechitzas where it's supposed to be, is nasa. Here too, the oila is going out of the chayma. It's going out of its where it's supposed to be, and so the Gemara answers that heicha that from there we learn chutz mechitzas can only work. The lav of basa going out chutz mechitzas can apply to kachim chutz the Klein, which could be eaten inside, but an oila which couldn't even be eaten inside, that's not considered chutz mechitzas. Even if chutz mechitzas has other ramifications, that the carbon can no longer be offered up, but it could never be eaten, and therefore so now that it's chutz mechitzas, it also can't be eaten. That's not a new. That's not a basa b'sada teifel sechelu. Basa b'sada teifel sechelu applies to something which could be eaten bifnim and has been taken out of where it's supposed to be eaten. An oila can never be eaten bifnim, and therefore the pasuk doesn't apply. The third question is the lechura. There's a pasuk which says by the noiser of the b'sar miluim, pasuk the miluim which became noiser. The pasuk is lo ya'achal if you left it over. Ki kodesh will because it's kodesh. The question is what's ki kodesh? So Rabbi says that it's coming to tell you that any kachim which become possible you're not allowed to eat. Any kachim which became possible you're not allowed to eat. So to over here oila became possible. So the Gemara answers what do you mean it became possible? Yeah, that hani mil again. It only works that pasuk if it became possible and early when it was okay, just like noisa. Before it became noisa, it was allowed to be eaten. But here by the oil, it couldn't be eaten at all. And finally, the Gemara asks that there's another pasuk kolotia that Rabbi says. It says kolotia loisiacha by the minchas kohen. The mincha, a certain type of mincha which is supposed to be totally burnt, and then it says loisiacha, don't eat it. And somehow, and I don't know offhand how, but Rabbi Lezer learns from that any time it's koloti, anything that has to be totally burnt, there's also a lav of loisei achol. So the Chor there's another lav, another isser, another malchus. And Mar says, Anachinami, right? There is a sixth isser, there is another malchus. But Rabbi was just saying, from the one pasuk of loisei chalechol, there's 5 yisurim for zar sha'achal mina oila lachazri zar sha'achal mina lishnei kusari chutz l'chayim. But in the case of Taka is another one from Kalatia. The Taka is Kalatia loisechel for noila, but that's not. He's not referring to it. Okay. Now we have another Gemara, which is the discussion of Gidlam and Rav. This is the final discussion that we're going to do. Gidlam and Rav says that Kohen who's off on Michatz Vashim Nezik is loika. Now, the emes there is anyway allowed. The way Rashi learned, there is anyway allowed from the Nezrika from the pasuk of lois sukalecha ma'isa began to Treish Vitzrecha praise the saying for all those things that it says, that it could have just said from the fact that it says again, we learn you're not allowed to eat the Nezrika. But Gidlam and Rav saying is that there's another law for Kohen who eats chatas v'ashim Nezrika. And the pasuk says v'achol ois mashakubim. The pasuk says by the kachim of the miluim that the Kohenim have to eat it ashakubim who they were ashakubim. That there was an atonement, there was a kapara. So now we learn that only after kapara, after zrika, when there's a kapara, you're allowed to eat it, but before that you're not. And there's a lot of Torah says what you should do, can do, but the deal is that you're not allowed to do it before Zrika. So it's almost as if the Torah says, don't do it. Lavabal Mechlal say it's called, and Lavabal Mechlal say, the way we understand the Gidlam Merav at this point is allowed. It's as if the Torah is telling you not to do it. So the Gemara straight away asks, what do you mean? We know that Lavabal Mechlal say is an asay. Whenever the Torah says do something, and from there we learn that you're not allowed to do something else, that not being allowed to do something else is not considered allowed. Allah when the Torah tells you clearly not to do something, but if the Torah says yes, do something, and you can imply, you can be medayik, not to do something else, that's actually considered an asay v'raya from the pasuk, where the pasuk says that you're allowed to, that you have to eat, that you're allowed to eat. You're allowed to eat an animal which is mafresis parsa malas gera, which is split hooves and chews the cud. And he says that you're allowed to eat, and from that we learn that you're allowed to eat nothing else. So, and nevertheless, the Torah felt the need to say again, lo yisoichlu, you're not allowed to eat an animal which doesn't have these simanim, is a raya, the lav say, because if it was considered lav, you wouldn't need to tell me again not to eat it. You already told me not to eat it. Alamai, when we told you not to eat it the first time, it's considered an assay. And the Torah wants it to be a lav, so that's why it says lo yisoichlu. So therefore, eat mahachi itna. Gemara finally says, if Rav Gidl Amarav, you want to learn Rav Gidl Amarav's thing, but it gets Mishnei Zrika, and the passage of Achleis Mashakuba, but I'm learning, it's not telling me that a kohen who eats gets Malkus for eating Mishnei Zrika, so that the kohen before Zrika is like it, because Itaka won't get like it, but rather it's telling me that a Zar who eats Mechatas or Asha Mishnei Zrika is Pater, even though it's Kachim, and you might think there's a lav of Lo Yochal Kaidashu. This is what we said earlier, that no, there's a lav of Zar Lo Yochal Kaidashu. Is Bahem, just the beginning of the passage is Va'achleis Mashakuba Bahem, that the kohenim are allowed to eat it, can't eat it when La'achazrika, so then a Zar is not allowed to eat it. When the kohen is allowed to eat it, so then there's a lav of Zar Lo Yochal Kodesh. But before the Zrika, there's no lav of Zar Lo Yochal Kodesh. Okay, we'll stop here.